Ever since the princess was very young, she had already identified the lifelong nemesis of her existence. That person was neither the witch who brewed terrifying cauldrons of magical potions every night, nor the malevolent dragon guarding the gloomy castle, and least of all the myriad of villains inhabiting this fairy tale world. Rather, it was the prince of the neighboring kingdom, who was righteous to an absolute fault. Yet, from the moment of her birth until now, spanning over 20 years, the princess and he had never even crossed paths once. How then had she incurred such resentment toward a prince she had never known? Cough, cough, this is a rather long story to tell. Thank you for choosing Whispering with Pineapple to listen to, a place where you can relax while listening to stories, practice your English listening skills, and verify translations through both Vietnamese and English versions. If there are any mistakes during the translation process, Pineapple hopes everyone will provide feedback. To give us more motivation to release more videos in the future, we hope you, our dear loves, will give Pineapple a like and a subscription to receive notifications whenever we release new videos. Wishing everyone happy listening and wonderful moments of relaxation with Pineapple. From the moment the princess began to form lasting memories, a legendary, flawless child had already existed in her world. The kind of child who was perfect from every conceivable angle, without a single blemish to be picked at, fully capable of crushing all the unruly children around him. In folklore, people often called him the child of someone else. Such a profound impression was entirely bestowed upon her by her royal father, the king. When the princess was still a tiny lump of dough, lying in her cradle, cooing and drooling, the great king had already begun turning the daily achievements of the neighboring little prince into out-of-tune lullabies, using them to coax the little princess to sleep every night. For instance, how the little prince next door knew how to crawl at 3 months, how to jump at 6 months, and could already toddle all over the courtyard, just as he turned 1 year old. As for the fact that his mother was a human queen, and his father was a demon priest, meaning he carried half demon and half human blood and possessed an innate racial talent to mature faster than ordinary humans, the king chose to be selectively and blindly ignorant. My dear, good daughter, just look. That brat next door was born on the exact same day, month, and year as you. You can't even stand steadily yet, while he has already begun learning to ride dragons and soar through the sky. With the mindset of wishing his daughter to become a phoenix, the king held the chubby, round princess right up in front of his face, his expression filled with agonizing distress. Oh heavens, my treasure, we absolutely cannot lag behind. The little princess, filled with distaste, spat a mouthful of milk all over his face. No wonder her royal father loved listening to gossip so much. He even asked his close friend, the Grand Archmage, for help, using magic to establish a parenting exchange group for all the royal parents across the fairy tale continent. Every day, he would stand guard inside it to collect bizarre rumors, serving as new material for composing his pre-bedtime lullabies. To the princess, these nonsensical lullabies were nothing short of absolute nightmares, filled with exaggerated and absurd fabrications of her father. She did not believe even a single period or comma of them. Consequently, the male protagonist of these stories could forget about ever leaving a good impression in her heart. By the time the little princess grew a bit older, the legends surrounding that prince, far from dying down, actually showed a tendency to grow increasingly ferocious, circulating frantically within countless parent groups across the fairy tale continent. Things like knowing how to dance with a sword at age 3, being able to shoot arrows at age 4, and memorizing 300 magical incantations by age 5, deeply earning the affection and praise of veteran professors throughout various witchcraft academies. Hearing these rants dripping with a sour scent of jealousy from her father, the little princess nearly rolled eyes all the way to the heavens. She was a clever child and knew exactly how long a treasured sword was. Even if the brat next door had a bonus from the racial talent of his demon blood, he was still only 3 years old at the time. What on earth could a measly 3-year-old child wield a sword for? Being able to lift a long sword would already be a super capability beyond his limits, alright? Sigh. The little princess pondered but could not fathom it. These rumors could be deduced as unreliable even if one thought with their heels. Yet why did her father stubbornly refuse to realize it? continuously passing on and believing in such sheer fabrications. Previously, she had clearly heard her beloved mother, the queen, mention that her old father, the king, had maintained an exceptionally sharp and agile countenance up until the moment he proposed to her, being a wise and capable man. Could it be that marriage caused a person's intelligence quotient to plummet? Perhaps it is because passionate love always blinds people. The queen explained to her young daughter with a smile. Turning around, she immediately bumped into the chest of her king husband, who was clinging to her, and the two embraced each other, laughing and flirting intimately. The little princess had no eyes to watch this. The little princess was utterly helpless. She could only silently swallow a gargantuan mouthful of dog food thrown out by her parents, feeling it clog up her throat. As for that prince, whose reputation she had only heard of but whose face she had never seen, he had long been relegated by her into the same league as the Dark Witch, the fire-breathing dragon, and the fat nanny who always forced her to eat broccoli, forming one massive syndicate of villains. When the little princess officially began her schooling and reading, her psychological rejection of the neighboring prince reached a brand new peak. The perpetrator sowing these seeds of disaster was, naturally, still her foolish father, who believed in the wind upon hearing the rain. All day long, he would nag in front of the little princess about the latest news popping up in the royal parents group, such as how someone else's child knocked away a fire-breathing dragon with a single sword strike, pierced through a giant behemoth with 2 arrows, and yes, there's also the matter of that brat's extraordinary talent, mastering high-level mage techniques during his very first witchcraft class, creating a rubbed-out fireball that could directly incinerate an entire castle. Compared to him, the other royal children were all dregs, the kind of finely crushed dregs that could not even be scooped up, unless the parents were willing to spend money to send them to extra tutoring classes, in which case there was still a great chance of redemption. The little princess had long since become automatically immune to these anxiety-selling headlines. She had even astutely developed suspicions, pondering whether the stuff was fabricated by some witchcraft academy lacking professional ethics, just to sell more courses. However, her anxious father insisted on jumping into the pit they had dug. Without a word, he dragged the little princess, who spent her days playing wildly outside, back home, spent a fortune registering her for countless tutoring classes, and wished he could pack her daily schedule so tightly that not even a tiny crevice was left for her to breathe. The little princess was at an age where her playful nature was blossoming. How could she endure such torment? She skipped classes and slipped away every 2 out of 3 days, and because of this, she faced no small amount of scolding from her old father, the king. Look at him, then look at yourself. Every single time her old father scolded her, he would use this sentence as an opening. The little princess truly grew so utterly weary of hearing it that she developed a physiological allergy to any news related to that prince. Sometimes, it was so severe that the moment she heard the other party's name, red rashes would instantly break out on her body. How irritating! The little princess grumpily scratched her itchy arm, cursing that never-before-seen prince 1,000 times in her heart. Why did that wretched brat have to keep jumping into her life, like an unbanished phantom? Just when on earth would he finally quiet down a bit? Naturally, the princess, who possessed a strong personality and independent views, had also tried to resist. When her foolish father began enumerating the various virtues of the neighboring prince again, she put forward well-reasoned counterarguments. Exploding visual appeal is because his family has good genetics. Who doesn't know and who hasn't heard of the beauty of the neighboring kingdom's queen? Rapid maturity is because his family trains him methodically. The capabilities of his demon father are fundamentally unmatched and unstoppable. Vast knowledge is because his family's geographical location is unbeatable. The land where the human and demon races blend naturally enjoys exceptionally smooth and fluid exchange. In short, that prince can currently become a divine existence whom I cannot catch up with even if I ran my legs off. Not because I am not trying hard enough, but because we already lag behind right from your generation, father. Therefore, before criticizing and educating your child, shouldn't you do a bit of self-reflection first? She spoke with such perfect logic that His Majesty the King was actually left with no way to refute. He could only raise a feather duster and chase this troublesome daughter of his as she scampered all over the castle. The little princess felt extremely aggrieved. But what could be done? Who told her to be born into such a pitiful era, happening to crash right into such a child of someone else? He was like a towering, ancient tree flaunting its fangs and claws, casting an endless shadow that prevented other small saplings from soaking up even a tiny bit of sunlight. While being pursued by her maddened father until chickens flew and dogs barked, the little princess deftly sought out her beloved mother as a shield for safety, while desperately praying to God. "Oh Lord, show some mercy and save this child. Any news related to that wretched brat, I don't want to hear ever again." The little princess's wish was fulfilled in a manner that no one could have anticipated. Not long after, the news regarding that prince abruptly ceased. The last time she heard word of the other party was during a dinner enveloped in an exceptionally solemn atmosphere. The king, filled with anxiety, spoke to the queen about the recent abdication of the old demon leader and the ascension of the new leader, followed by the flames of war that had erupted in the neighboring country over the recent period. This included the misunderstandings and disputes between the demon and human races, the innocent civilians whose homes were destroyed and who were forced to wander displaced everywhere, as well as the pitiful young boy who had been seized by the demon race to be held as a hostage. That evening, the little princess had no appetite at all. This was the first time she had listened to the affairs of that child next door with absolute, rapt attention. Unfortunately, this bad news showed no signs of a turning point. By the time the king finished speaking, only a long, regretful sigh remained. At night, the little princess sat clutching her pillow on the windowsill of the castle's highest tower, gazing up at the moonlight outside. Her mood far from good. She was a clever girl, but in the end, she was just a young girl. Regarding the shifting geopolitical dynamics that the king and queen had discussed at dinner, she was still unable to fully comprehend them. Throughout the past several decades, the humans and demons of the neighboring country had always coexisted in harmony. Why had a violent rift suddenly emerged just because a new demon leader ascended to power? She pondered over the tangled threads within it, but could not make sense of them. Yet, she knew how difficult these past days had been for the people living in that war-torn kingdom. Even if they resided within a fairy tale world, this fact would not change. As for that prince who had been taken by the demon race as a hostage, the little princess tried her best to imagine a youth who had lost the protection of his parents and home, suddenly cast adrift in an entirely unfamiliar, yet malice-filled environment. It must be incredibly painful and arduous. Clearly, the god of destiny had treated him quite well before, willingly bestowing all the finest things in this world upon him. The little princess suddenly realized that sometimes the god of destiny was precisely that cruel. First giving you everything that seemed glamorous, and then, the moment the time came, ruthlessly snatching it all away without a shred of mercy. That night, the proud princess let down her reserve, weeping silently all by herself as she embraced the moonlight. She had realized the impermanence of worldly affairs early on, while simultaneously feeling a deep sorrow for that unfortunate youth. The little princess gradually matured into a young maiden, blossoming to the point where if one spoke of appearance, she had it, and if one spoke of talent, she possessed it. So exceedingly outstanding that she seemed unlike an ordinary person. During those years, driven by various face-to-face training classes, a trend of organizing youth competitions swept across the fairy tale continent. The royal families of various countries eagerly arranged for their heirs to gather and compete against one another, and the princess was not at all surprised when she was pushed forward by her royal father to uphold the family's honor. Fortunately, she was genuinely powerful. She rarely suffered defeat in those competitions, receiving all kinds of trophies until her hands grew weary. Inadvertently, she also became the child of someone else, passed around in the words of countless parents, becoming the object of secret resentment and the source of nightmares for other royal children of the same era. Did the princess feel joyful and proud because of this? Naturally, a little bit. Yet, every time she easily defeated an opponent in a match, her heart could not help but feel a tinge of regret. Without a well-matched adversary, even the competitions became dull and flavorless. If only that youth were still here. During her grand coming-of-age ceremony, The princess bit her lip and silently thought, if only that youth were still here. Then he and I could have a fair and square duel. How thrilling that would be. Worldly affairs are unpredictable. Just when everyone thought they were about to forget that legendary youth, he returned. Heaven only knows what grueling trials and hardships he had actually endured over those years. But those hardships, far from crushing him, had instead tempered him to become more composed, dependable, intelligent, and courageous. The young prince had not been raised astray at all. He successfully persuaded the new demon leader to grant him his freedom, while simultaneously utilizing the advantage of his half-human, half-demon bloodline to travel back and forth between the two warring sides to convey messages and communicate, reconnecting the bond that had once been severed. He even wrote a letter to the princess's father, hoping His Majesty the King could assist as a mediating arbitrator so that the dawn of hope could once again shine upon that land already riddled with wounds. The great king agreed to his request. As a loyal supporter of the prince for many years, he would not hesitate in the slightest. Under the joint efforts of everyone, the misunderstandings between the humans and demons of the neighboring country gradually dissipated. The smoke of war finally died out, and the long-lost peace returned to the homeland alongside the prince. When the news arrived, the princess had just accepted the queen's arrangements and was preparing to set off for the border region between the two countries to manage and assist the refugees of the neighboring country gathered there, hoping their journey back home could be a bit more stable and smooth. Despite foreseeing that the upcoming work would be by no means light, this good news still caused the corners of the princess's mouth to curve upward. At this very moment, she desperately wanted to say a word of welcome back to that familiar stranger. After missing each other for over 20 years, they finally had the opportunity to truly meet face to face. The princess discovered with a headache that she had rejoiced too soon, before the prince of the neighboring kingdom could even be seen. Her royal father's long silent nagging had taken the lead to restart. While acting as a mediator between the two warring sides of a neighboring country earlier, he had visited the neighboring capital and seen the prince in person. This surge of excitement had fully charged the king with chicken blood, causing him to exert every effort to forage for intelligence from unknown sources, nagging in front of his daughter all day long as if possessed. The exceptionally highly efficient neighboring prince has led the returning citizens to begin the reconstruction of their homes. The far-sighted neighboring prince has organized diplomatic relations with surrounding nations with absolute clarity. The broad-chested neighboring prince has already signed a cooperation agreement, ensuring the future with the new leader of the demon race. The princess, having lost her will to live, displayed a constipated face, listening numbly to her father's endless droning. In her heart, there was only a single line of dialogue playing on an endless loop. It's here, it's here, it's here again. Needless to say, this foul debt was once again silently recorded by her onto that prince, whom she could not have reached even with a cannon blast. The prince, thousands of miles away, remained entirely oblivious at this moment that within this interlacing of time and space, he had somehow inexplicably incurred someone's deep resentment. Perhaps it was precisely from that moment on that the princess began to secretly plot a grand scheme. One day, she would personally drag that guy down from his divine pedestal, proving to her foolish father that all those so-called rumors were completely unreliable. Nothing more than deceptive marketing ploys created by unscrupulous merchants to sell courses and hawk goods. She firmly believed so. Not long afterward, the princess finally obtained the opportunity for an official meeting with the prince. It was an exceptionally lavish banquet held within the royal palace of the neighboring country's capital. The royal families of various nations along with the demon race turned up en masse, gathering to celebrate this hard-won peace and stability. Considering that this event was of paramount importance, before the banquet commenced, her royal father specifically grabbed his daughter to give her thousands of warnings and 10,000 admonitions, reminding her countless times absolutely not to let some whimsical idea strike her at the banquet to make trouble, and that she must prioritize etiquette, conducting herself with elegance and propriety. The princess rarely agreed to him so obediently. Afterward, the moment she took her seat at the banquet table, she immediately threw the promise made to her old father to the back of her mind, her burning gaze locking tightly onto the object of her greatest attention at this gathering. That's right, it was the prince sitting directly opposite her, a certified, textbook child of someone else. From the very first glance she cast at the other party, the princess unconsciously straightened her back, putting on an impeccable, polite smile, swiftly entering a combat state. Yet, after several rounds of conversation, she discovered that the situation was a bit amiss. She had originally come here brimming with absolute confidence, wanting to verify that even within a fairy tale world filled with magical colors, such a perfect prince fundamentally did not exist. She wanted to courageously expose the rumors that had always been passed around by word of mouth among parents, delivering a delightful victory and a thorough closure to those children who had suffered deeply throughout this time. But what if all of this was not entirely a rumor? What if, through what her own eyes witnessed coupled with a segment of pleasant and harmonious conversation, it was verified that a huge portion of those rumors was actually the truth, and that the truth was even more wonderful and attractive than the rumors themselves? The princess, who had been full of confidence just moments ago, suddenly felt an unprovoked wave of guilt. The longer they conversed, the more she discovered that the other party indeed possessed countless fine qualities that made one's eyes light up, while rarely maintaining a cautious humility, remaining gentle and friendly. What was even more outrageous was that the other party had only shared a small glass of red wine with her, yet suspicious red flushes had already bloomed upon his handsome face. The princess, to her own surprise, actually felt that such a fellow was a tiny bit, well, adorable. Good heavens, had she gone mad? How was she supposed to have a fair and square duel with him like this? The princess gulped down a large glass of red wine for herself, pondering in extreme dejection. Help me. This was completely different from her plan. To let the hot air rushing straight to her head cool down a bit, the princess forced her attention away from the prince, shifting it to the conversation her father was having with the other royals present. Afterward, she discovered with astonishment, why was the situation over there also completely different from what she had imagined? At the beginning, hadn't the elders shared a tacit understanding, engaging in mutual commercial flattery to create an enthusiastic appearance of mutual joy between hosts and guests? Why was it that the moment the topic touched upon the elders' youth, the style of speech suddenly shifted, becoming laced with hidden meanings and concealed weapons, undercurrents surging violently? The princess pricked up her ears to listen intently for a moment, astutely catching the main point. It turned out that among the elders of the older generation present here, there were also a few who had been the child of someone else during their youth, while another bunch of unfortunate souls, including her own father, had been grabbed by the ears and nagged by their parents from childhood to adulthood, nagged to the point where thick calluses had grown over their ears. The princess came to a sudden, grand realization. The so-called child of someone else was fundamentally not a deceitful rumor as she had once thought, but rather a terrifying convention, a malicious curse, a wretched old custom that caused generation after generation of parents and children to suffer plights and miseries too agonizing to describe. At this moment, the elders' conversation had shifted to the next generation raised by their respective families, and the offensive and defensive maneuvers grew even more ferocious. Not an inch of ground was conceded. Sparks flew in all directions. These sparks ignited the princess's inspiration. This battle belonging to the parents, the victory or defeat of a momentary battle, could fundamentally not decide the outcome of the entire chessboard. Even if a certain side temporarily held the upper hand right now, worldly affairs are unpredictable. In the end, there would always be a next time, and a time after that. Once this generation finished comparing, there would still be the next generation, and the generation after that. Never-ending, with a stopping point eternally out of sight. The princess was entirely unwilling to walk down her father's old path. She resolutely shifted her gaze, sweeping swiftly across all her peers present at the venue, filtering out those who had once been defeated opponents under her hands, until her eyes ultimately fell upon that prince, who was currently displaying a bewildered expression. She had no interest in passing the torch to participate in that never-ending family competition, let alone continuing to be grabbed by her father to be compared over and over again in the days to come. The clever princess decided to execute a brand new plan that could eliminate trouble once and for all. This new plan was simple, direct, and absolutely feasible. It was to take the most outstanding child of someone else's house and turn him into a member of her own. Thank you everyone for listening to the end of today's story by Pineapple. Wishing you, my dear loves, a truly joyful and happy day. Hope that everyone will support Pineapple in the upcoming story series.